Okay, so in this lesson we are going to create another set of joints, and this is going to be for our FK setup. We also want to make sure before we do that that we align the orientation of the joints, because if we look right now, I have the move tool in object mode, and I just want to make sure that all the joints are aligned correctly. I'm actually looking at them right now. Everything looks fine except for this end joint. So this end joint's the only one that is oriented any different than all the rest of the joints. Let me double check. Okay, we can see that it flips here. That can cause an issue. So let me just start off by orienting all the joints. So I'm going to select the pelvis, which is the root for our skeleton. New skeleton. And then we're going to do orient joints, and that should go through and fix it. Let's double check what the settings are here. That looks fine. So when I do that, you can see that it still flips, and that can cause issues when we're rotating, and we don't want that to happen. So let's start off with fixing this one, and then we'll look at fixing some of the other ones. So Shift P will unparent it, and I want this to look at that skeleton here. So this is going to be the target. This is object to be controlled. Going to go to constraint aim, and by default I have it set to along the x-axis, and y is the up vector, and that is what I want. I'm going to undo that. That is actually not what I want. I want to set it, instead of x, I want to do it negative x, so that way it follows the direction of all the other joints. So now it looks proper. All I have to do now is delete that constraint, and I can do all the parenting again. There we go. So the problem that we have when it flips right here is, let's say we selected all these joints and we wanted to rotate it. It doesn't give us a rotation the way we would expect it to. So we have to make sure that these are going to be reoriented the way that we want it to actually work. So let's look at this. Let's make sure that we keep the Z in this direction. So that's fine. Here it flips. So on this joint, I'm going to unparent it, and I'm going to unparent the rest of the chain from it, so that way we can work on this joint specifically. I want it to look at this joint, so this is going to be target, object to be constrained is here, and then let's do the constraint aim, and let's test it the way we have it set right now with the negative, because that's negative x the way we want to align it. The only difference that we may have is what direction we want the y to be. So let's apply it, and we do that. That looks correct. Perfect. And actually, it's not quite what we want, but it's close, because we actually want it to aim towards this next joint. So I'm going to delete that constraint, but we know that the process is correct, so let's see what happens when we connect it to this joint. So that's going to be the target, object to be constrained is here, and apply. The only thing is that we want it to go along the x, so this is going to be a positive x instead of a negative x. Boom. And here's where it flips. the z, which is not what we want. So I undid that, and I'm going to put negative y. And there we get the orientation that we want. So we can delete the constraint now. And that's going to be parented here. And let's look at the next joint here. Here this one's flipped too. So I'm going to unparent it. And this is going to be the target. This is object to be constrained. And let's look at this aim. Cool, that does what we want. Now we just need to delete the constraint. I'm going to parent it. Let's check this one. Is this one lined up right? Nope. So let's unparent it and do the aim constraint again, and then delete the constraint and reparent it. Let's check this one here. That one looks correct, so I'm going to reparent it, and let's check the rest of them. This one here flips. We're not really going to use it, but since we're fixing everything else anyways, let's make it all work the way we want it, just in case for any reason we want to know what the rotation of that is, that we get it lined up. So both of these are aimed in the wrong direction. So here I'm just going to do this. Oops. I want to do the opposite direction. Target object to be constrained. This, and here we get it, but the z is in the wrong direction. So let's try this. And that is not quite what I want either. So it's the z is pointing in the right direction, and if we do this, the y will be pointing, the x and the y will be pointing in the right directions this way. The only problem is the z is not pointing in the right direction. So let's see, upworld vector constrain. Actually, this might be the best that we can do right now with this constraint. And this one's the same thing. So I'm just going to parent these. So let's check the rotations now. So if we select multiple joints in the chain and we rotate it, we get an anticipated rotation the way we want it. So all that is set correctly. I'm going to take this bind skeleton and just duplicate it. And this is going to be our FK. This duplicated version of it, and the FK, we want to make sure that we take all the binds off and we switch it to be FK instead. So let's go in and do this. So we need to rename this here. We're going to go to modify, search and replace names. I'm going to search for underscore bind and replace it with underscore FK. Let's do anim for animation underscore FK. And replace that. That gives me most of them. I'm just going to have to rename the last couple of them. FK and underscore FK. I typically like a capital FK instead of lowercase. So if you wanted to adjust that, we can still do the modify and search replace names again, and just say search for FK and replace it with FK. Apply. Can check it. Looks good. Yep, so that's it for this lesson.